What up? What up? What up? What up? What up? So today's book that I'm doing is called The Books of Enoch. Now, this book right here is actually a really, really, really good book. I've read this book so many times. You can look. I mean, the cover of it is great. Uh, like always, all these tabs. Every book that I own has tabs like that, and it's just stuff that I found that I think is very interesting and stuff that I think deserved more research. Um, I can say for the most part, you know, most people they have this idea of the Book of Enoch, which is, I mean, like I said, this book right here is amazing. This book is amazing. Um, it's there's a lot to it than what is just reading the words. I know there's a big old whole spiel about people going on about it right now. And it's actually interesting seeing everybody get worked up about it, especially when it comes to UFOs and all this other stuff. It's like, up to the point where it's almost like, do people even try to understand what they're reading? And it's hard to put it in words because of the simple fact that I've read this book so many times, and it's not just reading the book. You also have to research what the book is trying to say. You have to read the words. You have to understand the words at this time and all this other stuff. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people don't take the time to do that. And what they to want to do is just sit there and say, okay, look, this is an indication of you know um, aliens and stuff. So of course, it has an introduction. I'll read, the first part of the introduction. It says, our search for deeper understanding often leads beyond a Bible itself. Even in our attempt to fully understand the Bible, we must go beyond the book. As we encounter references to social conditions, cultural practices, and even other writings mentioned within the scriptures, we are called to investigate and expand our knowledge in order to fully appreciate the context, knowledge base, and cultural significance of what is being taught. So that's basically what I said. And what I understand from this is that, you can't just pick up the Bible and think that you have all the information, because there's information in the Bible uh, that you have to go and read somewhere else, like the Book of Enoch, for instance. The Book of Enoch is not fully in the Bible, right? So, I mean, you get a little bit about Enoch in the Holy Bible, KJV, NIV, whatever version you want to pick. But for the most part, it's how can I say, it's more like picking different sources to understand the whole story is basically what I'm trying to say. And that's what you have to do. And that's what I learned from, this introduction. And, it does, it gives you like a little background of all the books that's mentioned in the Bible. I don't need to go over that. That's just something that I just uh, tabbed up. But the next tab I have, it says is Book of Enoch, discovering it and dating it. Now, this is important because a lot of people go on this whole spiel about the Book of Enoch, and this is what they said, and this is leads to extraterrestrials and UFOs and all this other stuff. But we have to make sure that we understand the time frame that this was written. We have Sumerian, cuneiform, Akkadian, Babylonian, Chaldean, Egyptian, and so much more that comes way before this. Even the Yoruba tribes and the doggone tribes that have things. So this part is going to be very interesting. So it says most scholars date the Book of Enoch to sometime during the 2nd century BC. We do not know what earlier oral tradition, if any, the book contains. Enoch was considered inspired and authentic by certain Jewish sects of the 1st century BC and remained popular for at least 500 years. The earliest Ethiopian text was apparently derived from a Greek manuscript of the Book of Enoch, which itself was a copy of an earlier text. The original was apparently written in Semitic language, now taught to be Aramaic. The Book of Enoch was discovered in the 18th century. It was assumed to have been penned after the beginning of the Christian era. This theory was based on the fact that it had quotes and paraphrases as well as concepts found in the New Testament. Thus, it was assumed that it was heavily influenced by writers such as Jude and Peter. So this is just interesting to me. You have it gives you the information. It even has a section right below it, says inspired, authentic, or fake. Okay, this is what it says, and that's why I always tell people just go read this stuff for yourself. Oh, just to keep it. We'll get to that in a minute. It has been largely the opinion of historians that the book does not really contain the authentic words of the ancient Enoch, since he would have lived several, listen now, several thousands years earlier than the first known appearance of the book attributed to him. However, the first century Christians accepted the book of Enoch as inspired, if not authentic. They relied on it to understand the origin and purpose of many things, from angels to wind, sun, and stars. In fact, many of the key concepts used by Jesus Christ himself seem directly connected to terms and ideas as the book of Enoch. The theories regarding the authenticity of Enoch vary widely. Some believe Enoch is midrash, that is an elaboration on a biblical story. In this case, it is suggested that Enoch expands Genesis chapter 6. So that just gave you basically a whole spiel of it. It talks about the famous Christians who accepted Enoch. One of the tabs that I have on here, it says this and many other books became discredited after the Council of Laodicea, and being under ban of the authorities, it gradually disappeared from circulation. So a lot of people know the Council of Nicaea, but there's different councils that happen. So in different time frames that they happen, and so it wasn't all just in the one spot. It was a gradual change of taking out certain books from the Bible and including other books and so on and so forth. That's why you have different books for different people, for different worshiping denominations, such as Christians, the Catholics, and the Islamic faith, and the Ethiopian Bible, for instance, right? How the first book of Enoch is divided. Now, this is interesting because, as you can see right here, it says the first book of Enoch, Ethiopic book of Enoch, right? And then the Ethiopian, basically, right? And then the second book of Enoch. Then you have the third book of Enoch, the Hebrew book of Enoch. So, and the book of fallen angels, the watchers and the origins of evil. So now this is interesting because this is where I wanted to talk about. I also have this book, the book of giants, from the same author, Joseph Lumpkin. So Joseph Lumpkin actually wrote this book, and what is it, this one? Because I know I have two of them. Let me see. Yeah, this one. And the book of Enoch one that I'm looking at. So the first book of Enoch is not one manuscript. It is a composite of several manuscripts written by several authors over a period of 300 to 400 years. The book of Enoch is composed of six main parts. These sections can be subdivided further. It could be argued that, like the writers of the Bible itself, the various authors of Enoch did not foresee their contributions being concatenated into a single volume. The six basic sections are as follows: the book of Watchers, 1 through 36. And then it gives you the book of Parables, 30. So it just basically gives you a breakdown of, the book of Watchers, the book of Enoch, and how it's divided and stuff like that. And it has the book of Visions, the astronomy calendar, warnings, blessings. It even has the book of Noah. So that's another tab. I always recommend every book that I go over. I always tell people to go get it. Every book that I have. I mean, it's just a matter of just grabbing the sources and learning them, seeing what it says. So here's something that's interesting. It says, one of the tabs I hit up was, says, in the chapters, the sons of heaven saw the lusted after them and said to one another, come, let us choose as wise from among the children of men. So this is beginning of the fallen angels coming into, or the angels, it says here, coming into, the women on earth. Now, I want to make sure people understand this. It says, and the angels. So if you look up the etymological word of angels, right, or you go um, to the Strong's Concordance, and I've done this plenty of times, and I'm not going to take time to do it again, but you go to the Strong's Concordance and look up what the word angel means according to the Strong's Concordance, and you're going to see that all it means is messenger. Okay, even demons and so on and so forth can be considered angels because they were messengers for a god. Some people will say, well, the devil is not a god, but guess what, some people worship the devil as a god, but that goes into a whole different idea and things like that. But the point is that when I read this, I hear, and they're, instead of saying the angels, I read as, and the messengers, the sons of heaven. I like to think of it as most kings and queens and people who ruled over, the pharaohs or anybody that ruled over their people, their land was on higher ground than everybody else, meaning that they were, somewhat, some type of way on a higher plateau of what other people were, so they could look down on others. And angels would come down there to the people. It kind of reminds me of the big old palaces where it's looking over, the people and stuff. That's how they would do it. Almost reminds me also of the Mount Olympus for the Greeks. So when I hear heavens, I just hear somebody that sits higher up on the ground. Okay, not necessarily in the sky and extraterrestrial outside of Earth's atmosphere or anything like that. Nothing like that, but more like, okay, these individuals are, um, just on a type of hill or something, right? And then they talk about I marked on here, and the women became pregnant and they bear large giants whose height was 3,000 cubit ells or eels. I've heard people say that so many different ways, but it's ELLS. Now this is interesting to me because this is where a lot of people get the idea that these giants were as tall as skyscrapers. There's been so many ways I try to find out how to break this down to make sense of it, and there's really no way to make sense of it. I know that uh, some people say that there's different ways of people measuring things back then. Some people use their whole arm, some people use the wrist, or the wrist into to the elbow. It was just different ways. It wasn't a set standard to measure things back then, but we even today there's really not. You grab two tape measures and line them up, two different tape measures at that, and they'll be off. One will be off by a little bit, but anyway, I try to figure out how to figure out the Giants portion, and it really only led me to reading this book. So I will be able to go over that more when I get to this book the next time I go live, because this is going to be the next book that I go over. And I have to say, that's the idea where people get the Giants from. So I mean, I don't know how to counter that or look more into that or understand the facts behind it. But when somebody says that there were giants, really tall as buildings in the past, I can say, yeah, they're talking about the Book of Enoch, and I understand exactly what it's talking about. Um, then it talks about Semjaza taught the casting of spells, root cuttings. Morales taught counter spells, release from spells. By Quijal, I'm not sure if I'm saying all this stuff right, the names, but it's taught astrology. Coco Bell taught the constellations. Ezekiel, the knowledge of the clouds. And then I just want to make sure that everybody understands this. Listen to this. One person, they say, is an angel, taught somebody how to cast spells. Well, what is a spell? Okay. Can we elaborate on that? Can anybody who says that these are extraterrestrials, what kind of spell are you talking about? Is it like voodoo that you're talking about or something like that? Or, the witchcraft that some people would be talking about? Describe that. But is that really bad? Root cutting, I mean, that's the type of herbal. Are they talking about agriculture? I mean, does it take an extraterrestrial to figure that out, an alien to figure it out? Or is it just take somebody to be out there in the woods someday, bored out their mind, and something accidentally happens, or their curiosity runs? Who knows, right? Another person counter spells. So somebody got sick and somebody was able to heal somebody sick, right? Maybe one of the spells was for somebody to get leprosy or something. And then somebody was like, oh, I know how to cure leprosy. I was out there in the woods one day, ran against this bush, and then the next day my stuff was gone. So I went back out there and put it on my arm. And, what can I, what happens, right? Like it went away. So I did the obvious thing and went back there and put it all over me. And now look, I countered the spell. Then somebody taught astrology. Well, I mean, we got people that sit outside all the time, every day, that's going to look at stars. I mean, is it really hard to teach somebody astrology? Hey, the moon goes from there to there. Let's see if we can figure out how to time that somehow, right? You got somebody the constellations. Well, I mean, that's easy. Just look at today's date where people talk about the Big Dipper. Uh, um, how can I say? I don't even know how to say it because I'm not the person that does this, but it's not hard to figure out to look at the constellations or the knowledge of the clouds, because one person taught somebody the clouds and stuff like that. The clouds move here. If the clouds look like this, it might be better rain. If the clouds look like this, it's not going to be any kind of precipitation, and all kinds of stuff. Then you got somebody the signs of the earth. Well, what's the signs of the earth? I mean, what could that be? Signs of the earth. How would we explain that? Is that coordinate points? GPS of somehow, markers, something, right? Signs of the sun. I mean, if the sun is over here, it's not wise to plant because it's going to be too cold. If the sun is over here, this is the perfect time to plant your seeds, right? We got the course of the moon. Now, this is interesting to me because I was just talking to Nikiana Jones about this. She had posted up something from a trip that she went to. I can't remember the name, but it had like these little scratch marks on it. I believe it was on the floor, if I'm not mistaken. And it reminded me of the Ishango bone. So I always say that women were the first mathematicians here on planet Earth because of the simple fact that the Ishango bone, I've talked about this in the past plenty of times, it's Ishango bone. And it was found in Africa. They dated, and I've read so many different dates on it, so I'm not even going to give you a date because everybody has their own different dates, and I'm not even here to argue that. You can do your research and find that. But the Shango bone was basically a bone that was math. It kind of lined up with the loops. They figured out somehow that it lined up with the moon, and that the moon and the women's menstrual periods, cycles, they could, I think they somehow annotated it. It's really hard to explain because when you go and look it up, they don't really understand it for themselves either. It's like some people's opinions here and there, but they know that it has to do with one, math, and because I'm not good with math, I won't be able to explain it well. And two, it had something to do with uh, women's menstrual, and with the cycle of the moon and stuff like that. So when they say somebody the course of the moon, me personally, I'm just going to be like, okay, they're talking about uh, you know some kind of annotation of the moon and how it helps them through their time. um I The next tab that I have is, it says actually Matthew 25:31, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory and all the holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory. So when I read that, I hear when the Son of Man, okay, comes into his recognition of who he is within himself, knowledge of self, look within, and all the holy angels with him, all the other messengers with him, however that's described, then shall he sit upon his glory. That means he would know who he is, meaning that in some ways, this is where some people get the idea of when men, women, and people on earth, on planet earth, recognize who they are and look within themselves, they become, and it's going to hurt some people's feelings, but they become a God-like individual. They're able to do things like God. There many arguments is that men and women create life here on planet Earth, right? We know that because of biology and stuff, but um, it's just interesting that you can have it. You can read things and understand it differently unless as long as you understand what they're trying to say. And that takes not just like reading one book. Here's another tab. It says, and Uriel said to me, the angels who have had sex with women shall stand here, and their spirits having assumed many different forms are defiling mankind and shall lead them astray into sacrificing to demons as gods. Here shall they stand until the day of the great judgment, in which they shall be judged and are made an end of. I don't know how to take that as. I just found that interesting because the angels who've had relationships with the women, um, their spirits in different forms are defiling mankind. Different forms. What does that mean? Well, I've read a lot of books from Dolores Cannon. I've read a lot of books about reincarnation and possession and all this other stuff. And if all that stuff is accurate as it is, um, it would take somebody who is highly intelligent to be able to do that, right? In some way, right? Or have some ability to do that, right? And that's where demons come into my understanding. When I read Plato's books, Cratylus, I think it's Cratylus. I believe that's the book, if I'm not mistaken. Him and Socrates give a great description of what demons are. And basically, it's just wise men or men who died honorably. Weird concept. Don't believe me? I posted that plenty of times on Twitter and talked about it. No need for me to get into it. If you don't believe me, hit me up in the messenger and I'll provide the actual source for you. But that's what I've read, which is weird to me. So I take that with a grain of salt. And then here's another thing that's very interesting to me. And I went from there to the middle of the earth. And I saw a blessed place in which there were trees with branches alive and blooming on a tree that had been cut down. Now he's basically saying Middle Earth, so that could be inside Earth's crust or something. I don't know, tunnels. I don't know how to take that. But there has been places where you can go inside of certain caves. I'm not even going to say caves, certain holes in Earth, and you can see trees in a nice landscape of agriculture there. There's not that many animals living around there, of course, but there's a water source and all kinds of stuff. So for me, it's just interesting to understand that on a better note. Here's an author's note. This is from the author Joseph Lumpkin. He says the angel Zotel, whose name means little one of God, welcomes back those sinners who have gone astray but have repented. Based on the description of the location, some have suggested the Sphinx could be a representation, although almost most of them believe this is to be unlikely. So a lot of people who talk about the Sphinx, right? And the idea and there's a second one and so on and so forth and all this other stuff. The Book of Enoch literally says that the angel Zotel, Zoteil, whose name means little one of God, welcomes back those sinners who have gone astray but have repented. Okay. Based on the description of the location, some have suggested the Sphinx could be a representation, although most believe, like I said, almost most people believe this to be unlikely. So that's pretty interesting, right? You got the Sphinx being talked about in the Book of Enoch, but it's not in the Book of Enoch as far as the textual comes from Enoch. It's an author's note of his interpretation of what he's learned. Okay. Now that's interesting because if you want to know more about it, and to people who are interested in the second Sphinx and all this other stuff going on, go look up Zoteil, Zoteil, whose name means the little one of God. Like I said, I really believe that when it comes down to reading this stuff, it's all about taking the time to understand it, right? Taking the time to read the information, gather the source, and so on and so forth. Here's another author's note. Here we have a verse that can be interpreted in various ways. The holy children from the high heaven could be the spirits of the righteous dead. However, other verses seem to suggest those souls are being held until judgment. Enoch 38:1 mentions a judgment, and this could be the one we seek to release the souls and make this verse mesh well. Right? So that's pretty interesting, right? Let's see. Let's see. Next tab. Here we go. Here's another author's note. There are many meanings of the word Satan, but all indicate great negativity. It can mean one of those. Okay, listen. This is very important. Like I said, it can mean one who is opposes, accuses, or deceives. In this case, there is some confusion as to who the Satans are. Satans. Okay, we are told the fallen angels taught men to war. But we are also told that it was the children of the angels that were so destructive. We are told that the angels taught men sorcery and spells, but it was the spirits of the Nephilim that went out from the bodies to destroy. Now, I already talked about that, but it's very interesting that Satan's, okay, most people know there's only one Satan, but there's multiple according to the author in this book. Author note, another one: flesh and blood will drown under the waters of the flood. All those who knew the fallen angels and all those who had given birth to the children would be killed, but the angels cannot die, and the spirits of the Nephilim do not need a body to survive. The text indicates the spirits need no food or water and go about unseen. So that's kind of crazy. What's interesting, and I just thought about this. Now, there's this back and forth. I've heard people say that Saint Germain has never eaten or in front of people. So I just wanted to bring that out. That's just interesting. Here we go. In verse 1, we read, and this is just a tab, I don't know, it's just in the middle of the chapter. In verse 1, we read the God Elohim is standing in the congregation of the mighty, that he, El, or God, is judging. Shaphat governing the gods Elohim. One way to easily understand this is to look at a supreme God, capital G, judging and governing a group of godlings. So, of course, there's multiple gods, like a henotheistic type idea, henotheism, right? Where there's a belief in one supreme God, but they understand that there are other gods. They just worship, they have their supreme God. It's no different than when you look at the Sumerians, Egyptians, where each city state had their own god that they worship. That's just basically what this right here is saying. Nothing serious about that, right? To stand in court setting and judge in the case there was some transgression. This adds weight to the fact that some angels committed transgressions while others did not. Thus, it is the verse that points to the fall of some angels and the judgment handed down. It also articulates the position of angels as gods. It is assumed that the point of view is that of man and not God. In our mythology, we see some gods were evil and violent, while other gods were kind and gentle. There were giants, cyclops, monsters, and those such as Hercules, Achilles, who fought alongside men. These could be various angels, but it could point back to the three types of beings coming from the union of angels and women: giants, Nephilim, and Elhol. Now, this is interesting. Hercules and Achilles, who fought alongside man. There could be these could be various angels. Now, that's just interesting, right? The term Eljo or Elio indicates a type of godlike being. The term indicates, and it's spelled Eljo or Elyo. The term indicates these were humanoids with special powers or abilities to the extent they would be remembered and placed in mythic stories so that they should not be forgotten. This leaves the Nephilim, which could be the monsters such as Cyclops, Medusa, and other creatures, memorialized in mythology. And let's see. It says, to add additional fuel to the fire, controversy over Psalm 82 Jesus quotes the verse in John 10:34 through 35. John 31, New International Version. Against, okay, it says, New International Version. Again, the Jews picked up stones to stone him. But Jesus said to them, I have shown you many great miracles from the Father. For which of these do you stone me? We are not stoning you for any of these, replied the Jews, but for blasphemy, because you, a mere man, can claim to be God. Jesus answered them, it is not written in your law, I have said you are gods. If he called them gods to whom the word of God came, and the scripture cannot be broken. Does the word of God, if we accept and understand it, makes us gods? What power or authority does the knowledge, secrets, and words brought to us from heaven by fallen angels give us? Authors note for more information on the heavenly names, such as the various names of the presence of the Lord, see the third book of Enoch, also called the Hebrew book of Enoch or 3 Enoch. Let's see. So let's see. The next tab is the Book of Astronomy, and it says authors note full description of the calendar and its application in prophecy are discussed in the section the calendar of Enoch's and Daniel's prophecy, starting on page 158. The book of the courses of luminaries of heaven, the relations of each according to their name, origin, and months, dominion, and seasons, with Uriel, the holy angel who was with me, who is their guide, showed me, and he showed me all their laws, regulations, exactly they are, and how it is with each of the years of the world, and to eternity until the new creation is accomplished which endures until eternity. So it talks about that. I got to remember something about the 10 heavens. Hopefully I had it marked so I don't lose it. The author's note, recall that many of the people of the time believed the stars to be angels. Okay, so a lot of people used to think that stars were angels at that time, right? They worship the stars, believing them to have the power to control fate, which technically it does, because if you look at Pleiades, a lot of people talk about tall, whites, blonde, blue-eyed aliens. Pleiades came from Pleiades. I laugh every time because if they actually look up Pleiades, and I'll be talking about this in here, and I also talk about it in the Popol Vuh, which I talked about Pleiades, also talked about Pleiades and the Sumerian format and everything else, and it all has to do with agriculture. So what that basically means is that people's fate was in the stars, in the stars' hands, because if they couldn't see Pleiades at a certain time, they didn't know when to do their agricultural needs. Looking at the stars and understanding the stars is what helped them with the agriculture, herding to domestication and all that other stuff, right? With with all kinds of different chickens, cows, all that stuff, right? They had to know how the earth moved, how the stars moved, and how the sun and moon and all this other stuff moved. So that that right there kept their livelihood in their hands, basically, because they were migrating, right? I know they were hunter gatherers and they survived for millions and millions and millions of years, but when there's a certain cataclysm event or something happens where there's a destruction of some kind, these people, they move, and a lot of people die off because they can't sustain their life, and so on and so forth. It says the scripture tells us that God was angry because men had taken to the worship of the things God created and have forsaken the worship of him who created those things. So that basically sounds like God said, hey, look, you're supposed to worship me. Don't worship that. I'm going to basically just I don't even know how to put it in words. You can think of it how you want. As an added note, we are told in other ancient texts that angels had begun taking men as lovers as well as females. Angels are always considered males in these texts. As noted, we are told in other ancient texts that angels begun taking men as lovers as well as females. Angels are always considered males in these texts. This is where it gets interesting. The Book of Visions. So this is where it gets interesting to me. I looked up the word etymologically word of visions. And the word Vision just basically means something in their imagination, meaning that I've shared it. I've been over it plenty of times. I don't need to go into it. I don't have to go to the website, show you all this. Just look up, go to Google or whatever your search that you want to, or type in etymology and then type in visions. And it's going to tell you something like imagination. And what that means to me is that somebody's seen something in their head. They didn't see something with their two eyes. They imagined it rather than seeing it. But this also makes me wonder about people who are blind. Do they imagine how somebody looks when they touch somebody's face? We use our senses for different things, right? One of our senses is to see, right? Eyesight, right? And we don't have to imagine what somebody looks like because we can use our senses of our eyes to look at somebody and see what they look like, right? But somebody who is blind, how do they imagine that, right? Somebody that was completely born blind or somebody who was has sight at one time or went blind, when you see them touching somebody's face and trying to how do they imagine that? How do they see that? That's the same way I understand how when people have their own meditative states, when they're meditating or they're astral projecting or even lucid dreaming, I think of it like that. You don't see it with your eyes, you see it within your mind. And there's so many different ways that you can do that using your different senses. One sense might be stronger than the next one, right? Case in point with the blind person where they can't see somebody, but they learned how to touch things. That's why when you read books, you can see it. You don't have to imagine the words, right? The words are in front of you. But people who have to use Braille, run their hands across those dots, they read those words, right? So Book of Visions, when you look at it, think about it, is not seeing it with your eyes, it's seeing it with your mind, something in your meditative state. That's the only best way I can explain that. The first vision was seen to foreshadow the flood. This is an author's note. But since the vision was of a piece of heaven breaking off and falling to earth with destructive force, it may be an end-time prophecy of a meteor strike. Another more timely interpretation is that of Satan falling to earth, which is the beginning of sorrow. So a lot of people, when I hear people talk about, oh, the flood, how did the flood start? The flood started, it just came out of nowhere, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, yo, two things. One, please stop talking and stop asking that question. And two, go read the Books of Enoch. The author actually gives a breakdown of that it was a piece of heaven that hit earth, which caused the floods. There's been a lot of theories, a lot of ideas, hypotheses, and all this other stuff about how this flood started. God flooded the earth. Well, how did he manage that? Well, some people will say that it rained for a certain amount of time, and that's how the water rose. Then others will say, something from earth came down and caused it. Well, two things can be true at once, right? On one side of the earth, it could have been raining for a very long time, because on another side of earth, a meteor hit the ground and caused a tsunami and all kinds of other issues. And with that, it comes rain, right? And it could have happened at a time that was, where it really rained that many days that long, right? 40 days, 50 days, 60 days. I don't know. Some people say so many different things, right? But the point is how did they measure their days? Some people measured midnight to, I believe, the afternoon one day, and then the afternoon to midnight again, or 11:59, up to midnight a day. So basically, in our 24-hour period, it'd actually be 48 hours. It would be 2 days worth of them, not 48 hours, but 2 days worth for them. It's kind of explained because everybody had their own time, how they measured days. It wasn't until a certain period where we stuck to, a certain calendar. Another author's note, it says in chapter 85 and following, a series of animals is mentioned. These seem to refer to nations or ethnicities. For example, the eagles may refer to the Roman Empire. The Islamic nation is represented by the asses. Egyptians are wolves. The Syrians are lions, and so on. See Daniel 10 for other like imagery. Now, this is just interesting because I'm actually in the middle of writing an article on this. I've been actually writing this article for about 4 years now. I'm just piecing different things together, about, of course. But the Egyptians were known as wolves. Just think about that for a second. You know what I mean? So, um, if you really go down to the different city states and stuff like that, you will see how everybody had their own representation of animals. So that's pretty interesting. Author's note: many believe verses 1-9 represent the story of Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel. The first white bull mentioned is Adam. The heifer is Eve. The two bulls born to them are black, one Cain, and a red one, Abel. Eve leaves to seek Abel and finds him. She laments his death. Adam confronts her. Cain goes on to produce many oxen. Eve produces another son and thus produces many more bulls and cows. Now, this is just interesting to me because I do have time for this. I actually wrote an article about bulls and heifers and all that stuff because of this reason right here. I read plenty of times that when you go to the beginning of mankind and agriculture and all this other stuff, right? You will see that bulls are the first representation of God. When I say that, you can look at the first alphabet. It's bull horns in Hebrew. A lot of ancient texts always talk about some main god being some type of bull or a bull being a powerful individual. And it's only because it's a representation of power, strength, so on and so forth. And what's very interesting about that also is the fact that every religion or faith or belief goes into that idea. When I wrote this article, I wrote it, matter of fact, I think just like a couple of weeks ago. And I wrote it only because of the simple fact that, I always try to find out the facts of different things. I don't want to, I want to make sense of what everything is being said. So when people talk about bulls and stuff like that, look here, I wrote this in March 11, 2026, National and Ethnic Animal Symbols. And you can actually see where I actually come across and talk about the Book of Enoch because of the simple fact that that was one of my sources on why I was talking about this animal symbolism in the Book of Enoch. When I came across the Book of Enoch and its different versions, I became deeply interested in the animal symbols found throughout its pages, especially the way page 115, chapter 84, which begins on chapter or page 114 is what inspired me to write this article. Truthfully, I had this article on my mind for the past 3 years because it took that long to really understand what Joseph Lumpkin meant when he wrote in chapter 85 and following a series of animals is mentioned. These seem to refer to nations or ethnicities. For example, the eagles may refer to the Roman Empire. The Islamic nation is represented by asses, Egyptians are wolves, and so on and so on. I took the quote straight from there and I gave credit to it. And I just talked about it, right? And you can see, the different things. I talk about Adam and Eve and, their agriculture and all that other stuff. But it was just interesting to me because of the simple fact that throughout, no matter where you go, animals are some type of representation of a group of people. We can see that all over. So that was one of the things. So right here, I'm just going to show this. It says the weeks of judgment. The paper, yeah, it's kind of bright. Yeah, it's kind of bright. I don't know why it does that. But the judgment of righteousness. So it says week 1, antediluvian, ice age to 16,000 BC. Then it says 93.3, and it says Enoch's time. It says week 2 was the flood, judgment, and cleansing, 93.4, Noah's time, and the great, and it just says, and the great and the first judgment of the world, 16,000 to 10,000 BC. Oh man, look, it did the whole thing like that, huh? We're gonna fix that. I don't know why. I'm gonna have to get me a new webcam soon because this don't, I don't be liking this sometimes, you know what I mean? let me bring this window back up. There we go. Then it talks about law for generations 93.6. And then it says Moses time 2000 to 1400 BC. And it just talks about different time periods. Let's see. I got a lot of tabs in this one. So we already have 45 minutes. Yeah, we'll be about another hour. And after some days, my son Methuselah took a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant by him and bore a son. And his body was white as snow and red as the blooming of a rose. And the hair of his head and his long curls were white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lit up the whole house like the sun, and the whole house was bright, very bright. And on it he levitated, arose in the hands of the midwife, opened his mouth, and conversed with the righteousness, Lord of the righteousness. Okay. And this is supposedly the fragment from the book of Noah. Okay. So this is just interesting. He says, as white as snow. So how does that look to somebody when it comes to as white as snow? How would you picture that? Let me take this off. How would you picture that, right? It's interesting because some people have pointed out, and I looked into it, could have been being an albino, right? White as snow. I mean, that's the only best description that I could think of is an albino of some sort. The next tab that I have is, and they shall produce on the earth giants not according to the spirit, but according to the flesh. And there shall be a great punishment on the earth, and the earth shall be cleansed from all impurity. I don't know how to take that. The day of crucifixion, Friday, April 1st, AD 33. This was using Enoch's calendar, the exact day. Was the day preceding Passover over on the Enochian calendar. Passover always falls on a Saturday on the Enochian calendar. The Friday crucifixion completed exactly 490 years to the very day on the Enoch calendar, because the 491st year would have begun on Passover, April 2nd, AD 33. Remember, there is no year zero. The calendar goes from 1 BC to 1 AD. How do we know it was the exact day? Passover lasts 7 days according to the Hebrews calendar, and 8 days according to the Gregorian and Enochian calendar, because the Hebrew calendar begins the day at sundown. See, remember how I said the days change? The calendar begins the day at sundown. Out of these 8 days, how do we know which day Jesus died? This was the evening which began Nisan 14, Luke 22:1, indicates that the entire feast was called Passover. So it's just looking into the Passover and get some more information. I'm not going to get into that because that's a lot. So the versions of Enoch 2 says, okay, yeah. So this is introduction to Enoch, the Slavonic Enoch. It was in 1773. Rumors of a surviving copy of an ancient book drew Scottish explorer James Bruce to distant Ethiopia. There he found one Enoch. Later, another book of Enoch surfaced. The text, which is known as 2 Enoch, was discovered in 1886 by Professor Sokolov on the archives of the Belgrade Public Library. Enoch was written in the latter half of the 1st century AD. The text was preserved only in Slavonic and consequently bears the designation Slavonic Enoch. The text has also been known by the titles of the 2nd Enoch, Book of Enoch, and the Secrets of Enoch. In the log version presented here, it appears that the last portion of the text was added as an afterthought. It contains the rise of Melchizedek. The appearance of Melchizedek ties 2 Enoch to several other texts, forming a Melchizedekian tradition. The author of 2 Enochs follows a tradition in which an aged mother who had barren up to her deathbed miraculously conceived Melchizedek without human intervention because, or before she was able to give birth to the baby, she died. The baby then emerged from the dead body. With the maturity of a 3-year-old boy, his priesthood would be perpetuated throughout the generations until another Melchizedek. Another Melchizedek. So there's going to be another one. You could be looking at one at your house or on one of your favorite podcasts or at work or somewhere. You never know. So you gotta, sometimes you just gotta pay attention to your surroundings. You never know who's around. It could be a test for everything. They always talk about tests on planet Earth, right? And we're supposed to pass these tests to get to the next stage of an enlightenment, right? How you gonna pass that test when you don't pay attention to what's around you? The test is all around you. So I be trying to tell people, man, you never know. You just never know. The history of the text is obviously long and varied. It probably began as a Jewish oral tradition with pieces taken from several Enochian stories, although the foundation of the story was first penned in Hebrew or Aramaic around the 1st or 2nd centuries AD. The date of the version of the text here is unknown. Later, the story was expanded and embellished by the Greek influences. So let's go to the next tab. It talks about the author's note. The 532-year cycle was calculated from the creation of Adam, which took place on Friday, March 1st, 5508 BC, according to some of the founding documents of the Orthodox Church, which are still in use. It is the base date on which the entire calendar system of the Orthodox Church is founded. The cycles are laid out in the final sections of the Typicon, which is the book that dictates the services, and are the Pasculion calendar sections. See how I talk about there's always different calendars? I'm telling you, you got to read this book to really get in. I'm giving you snippets of what's being in this book, the Books of Enoch. This is not even the whole thing. I can't read the whole book because it goes against copyright, right? Let's see if I can fix this thing back up. But like I said, a lot of people don't understand that it only takes a matter of getting the source and reading it for yourself. I know a lot of people don't have the time, money, or sources to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I do what I do. I take the time, I read it, I share it. I love discussing it. Everything that I'm doing falls in, fair usage and all that stuff because I'm talking about it, doing a review. I highly recommend everybody get this book from Joseph Lumpkin. And then as soon as you're done with this book, I want you to get this one because it's the same one. It's the Book of Giants. And this is the next book that I'm going over tomorrow, or not tomorrow. It's probably next week. But you have to understand, like when I was talking about the visions, when people say, oh, Ezekiel's seen this and Enoch's seen this, well, did he see it with his 2 eyes or did he see it in an imaginative state? Then we can go from there, because if you're saying that he's seen an imaginative state, why do you believe his imagination rather than somebody who's talking today, probably in 2026 right now, telling you something that they imagined, that they talk to God or Jesus or this, that, and the third, and you don't believe it? Like, what makes you believe that person rather than the other one? Because this person has a book with it on them. You have to remember, these books were written way after Enoch was alive, right? So in reality, anybody can say anything. Just think about all the people that's publishing books today, how easy it is to publish a book, right? I know a lot of people say they don't like, reading self-publishers because sometimes they'll find mistakes in people's books and this, that, and third. I have books from Oxford University and Harvard. I'm telling you, every one of those books. Matter of fact, the books from Oxford and Harvard seems to have more errors and grammatical errors in their books than some of the self-published books authors that I read. It's crazy because I'll read something like, I know they knew better than this. You know what I mean? And it's just so funny. So when people judge a book by its cover, it's about the materials. Not everybody can catch everything, right? Not everybody has the funds to go get an editor or do this, that, and third. It's the worst. And that's why I like doing what I'm doing. Eventually, I'm going to start reading my book online or I'm just trying to learn how to pace myself with reading and stuff like that, and narrating and stuff like that. So that's another journey that I'm actually on, because I feel like I can do it the best way myself. I wrote a book, my book right here, Journeying Through the Origins of History, which can be bought on Amazon, which bestseller on there. And that's kind of weird because just of who I am. You know what I'm saying? I'm very high strong on what I believe. And I can tell you right now, I don't believe half the stuff a lot of people say because they only read things just to follow with their narrative. I read things to try to understand. And what I mean by that is a lot of people, they'll read something and say, see, Ezekiel said that he's seen this. But and there's extra, and they'll start talking about how there's extraterrestrials, and I'm like, yo, but Ezekiel's seen that in their imagination. He was meditating, or he was sleeping, or something like that. Nobody really knows exactly what he was doing, but he definitely was in a sleep like state, right? And he's seen it in that. That's why he calls it a vision. So when you look up the word vision, you understand that it's not, hey, I'm vision these. You know, I seen these is what you say. You don't say I vision these. Vision is something like I imagine, right? So we just keep it simple, right? Let's go to the next tab. I thought I flipped pages, but I guess it went back to that page. Hold on, let's see. Let's go to the next tab. These two, dang. There's not much in this one that I talked about, huh? Let's see. If all things were created in 6 days, then the souls of all people were created at that time. In Jewish mythology, the place that the souls were housed until birth was called the Guf. Each soul was created for a certain place, time, and destiny. According to one version of the myth, when Guf is emptied of this world, are merely reflections of the eons in the eternal realm. The reflection, oh shoot, that's my bad. I flipped 2 pages. Let me read that again. According to one version of the myth, when the Guf is emptied of souls, time ceases. In another version, when the last soul dies and returns to God, time will end. So when the last soul dies and ends, time will end. Enoch wrote 366 books in a 720 period containing information on all things, including all souls who are prepared for eternity before the formation of the word. Let's see. So that tells you about the soul. So basically, when the last soul dies and returns to God, then the world will end. But what world? Our world, Earth, you know, world of souls and everybody and all that, or what? You know, so that's interesting. The next tab, 1 verse 3 Enoch. Similar points appearing in 1 and 3 Enoch are Enoch ascends to heaven in a storm chariot. Enoch is translated into an angel. Enoch as an angel is given authority in heaven. Enoch receives an explanation or vision of creation and cosmology. Enoch sees a hostile angel named Azazel. Now, this is interesting to him. Enoch ascends to heaven in a storm chariot. A lot of people consider that a spaceship, right? Then it talks about but that's the only thing that gets me. Storm chariot. I get that. I get the whole relationship with extraterrestrials and all that other stuff. But some people really say it's just a vision. So, man, it goes everywhere. 3 Enoch and Metatron. Whenever I hear Metatron, I'm always thinking of what's that? Transformers. The main theme throughout the book is the transubstantiation of Enoch into the angel Metatron. So angel Enoch became Metatron. Metatron appears in various Jewish, Christian, and Islamic works, but was a central focus in medieval Jewish mystical texts and occult sources. Abraham preventing him from sacrificing Isaac. The place and authority of Metatron has been hotly debated, as seen even within the book. He is seen as sitting in heaven. This is only permitted if one is a deity. He is referred to in the text as the lesser Yahweh. So he's the lesser Yahweh. Yahweh makes up the tetragrammaton, forming the names we pronounce as Yahweh or Jehovah. Okay, the 4 letters making up the divine name, the Yod, He, Wah, which he having the sounds of YHWO, or a placeholder NH. When he ends a word, it is often silent due to the fact that the German theologians were heavily involved in the theological research and study. One may also find the tetragrammaton rendered as Yahweh, since the V in German has a W sound. Word, word, word. Right, right, right. A Christian perspective, as the Christian community came in contact with the Jewish book of the three Enoch, they had little trouble reconciling the names and the position of Metatron. To those Christians, a person who may sit in heaven, who judges and who is called by the same name taken by God, must be Yeshua, also known as Jesus. It may be helpful if the meaning of the name Metatron could be ascertained, but it is not clear. Suggestions are that the name originated from the roots words of such phrases as keeper of the watch, guard to protect, one who serves beyond the throne, one who occupies the throne next to the throne of glory to lead or to measure. Next tab is the Merkabah. A lot of people talk about the Merkabah. Means chariot, or in this case, chariot of fire, or chariot of light. It is pulled by four chayot, or living creatures, each of which has four wings and the four faces of man, lion, ox, and eagle. What does the lion, ox, and eagle? Remember the Roman, the Syrians, and so on and so forth. Says, see Ezekiel 14-26. The Bible makes mention of three types of angel found in the Merkabah. The first is the seraphim, the burning angels. These angels appear like flashes of continuously ascending and descending. These powered the chariot. Then you have followed by the Shayat or Kayat, Chayot, which are followed by the Ophanim, Ophanim. The chariot is as in constant state of motion, and the energy behind the movement runs according to this hierarchy. The movement of the Ophanim is controlled by the Kayat, while the movement of the Kayat is controlled by the seraphim. So this is where you get Enoch 3. Now, keep in mind, the book of Enoch, the first one, the first book of Enoch is the most accurate one, they say, or most, I don't even know how to say it. The best one that the first one, well, of course, the first one people should read, but highly recommended to read. Rakia is a key Hebrew word in Genesis 1:6-8-8a. It is translated firmament in the King James Version, and expanse. So firmament and expanse is the same. In most Hebrew dictionaries and modern translations, raka means to spread out, beat out, or hammer as one would a malleable metal. It also can mean plate. The Greek Septuagint translated rakia 16 out of 17 times with the Greek word steroma, which means a firm or solid structure. The Latin Vulgate AD 382 used the Latin word or term fermentum, which also denotes solidness and firmness. The King James translators coined the word firmament because there was no single word equivalent in English. Today, firmament is usually used potentially to mean sky, atmosphere, or heavens. In modern Hebrew, rakia, R-A-Q-I-A, means sky or heavens. However, originally it probably meant something solid or firm that was spread out. Azazel is likely the same being as Azazel. It's spelled two different ways. Azazel, A-Z-Z-A-E-L, and Azazel. The accuser angel, who was the leader of the fallen angels or fallen ones. Etymology connects the word with the mythological Uzzah in Azazel and fallen angels, to whom reference to be found in Genesis 2:4. In accordance with the etymology, the sacrifice of the goat atones for the sin of the fornication of which those angels were guilty. Then it talks about see Enoch 1. So yeah, we're almost done with this book, y'all. Almost done. The next tab, Samael, Sammael, is the head of the Satans or accuser. He is also the ruling angel over Rome, the arch enemy of Israel. So Samael is the arch enemy. The idea of more than one Elohim. Let me start that over. The idea of more than one Elohim is not new. It is addressed in Psalm 82, a psalm of Asaph. God stands in the council of the gods. He judges among the gods. How long will you judge unjustly and show preference to the wicked? Selah, judge the poor and the orphans, do righteousness to the afflicted and dispose this. Deliver the poor and oppress, save them from the land of the evil. They do not know and they have no understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. I said, you are gods and children of Elion, every one of you, but you will die like mortals and fall like one of the princes. Rise up, O God, and judge the earth, for you have inherited all the nations. This section seems to preserve a fragment of a book called The Session of Moses. We got more sources to go with the multiple gods, right? The ideas. Let's see. The great prince when he was Hammon, Hamon, the great prince, the fearful and honored, beautiful and terrible, he who makes all the children of heaven to shake. When the time draws near, that is set for the saying of the thrice holy, he removes the glorious crown from his head and bows himself to the ground. For it is written, at noise of the confusion, at the ancient preparation of the salutation of holy, 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 the people are fled at the lifting up of yourself, the true nation, the nations of scattered. Let's see the next one. Within the entire book of Enoch, this chapter could be the most important to all children of the book, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The story of creation has God creating everything in 6 days. Everything must also include all that souls that are ever to be born. That basically means that every soul that is to be born, that's it. And yes, some people have to come back in time and do these tasks over again, which I find funny because they don't pay attention to their surroundings. These souls are housed in a chamber near the throne of God called the Gulf. This chapter tells us the souls of righteous are housed. I've read this also from the city of Agreda, the mystical city of Agreda, or I think it's called the mystical city of God, actually. And it's, I can't remember who it's by, but it's by this nun. And she's supposed to be given these visions from the Virgin Mary herself. And she says in this book, and I'm not sure if I already went over these books or not. Oh yeah, I did. I did go over these books already. It talks about how these souls are in these kind of containment or in these certain places, right? But also that how can I say, these gods, or not these gods, these souls that they have, they are housed like that, right? And they are in a way in an area where that's all of them. Like there's no more souls after this. God doesn't create more souls after this. This is for him. We're the only batch, right? And that's why some people have to come back here and go, because it's an everlasting learning thing. Energy never dies. But the simple fact is that these souls, before a baby is born, a certain amount of days after the woman is pregnant, that a soul is implemented into the body. So I found that pretty interesting. The fallen angels, the watchers, and the origins of evil. This is where it talks about the giants. Adam knew his wife, and Eve bore 2 sons and 3 daughters. In the 3rd week, in the 2nd Jubilee, she gave birth to Canaan. In the 4th Jubilee, she gave birth to Abel. In the 5th Jubilee, she gave birth to her daughter, Awan. So this is just a book. This is all another portion of the book of that he added to the book of Enoch. I think this is interesting because, and I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. So it's just interesting to me that we also know that there are new heavens. Also in this book too, I want to talk about, it talks about different heavens, different amount of heavens. So the first heaven, there's different heavens, of course, for different reasons. There's actually no hell. There's no hell at all. Hell is something that they say is actually made up and new. But there's no hell. There's heaven. So no matter what, everybody goes to a heaven. It's just a different type of heaven, right? And uh, the 10th heaven is where God actually resides. And you can only get to that when you're basically enlightened. You can't go to the 10th heaven until you meet all your criteria to be there. So I have to say, you know what I'm saying? I appreciate that, Web3. I always say, information is good. Sources are good. It's hard to come up with what people believe. It's actually hard to do a lot of this stuff on your own. Like I try to use Chat GPT or Grok for the thumbnails and stuff like that because I'm not an artist and I don't have time. I do all this stuff myself. So like what I like to do is I like to just go over books. I like to take books that I've read, I tab them up just like any book that I own. You know what I'm saying? This is my stack. These are my stacks right here. And I like to go over them and share what I've read. I don't have an opinion. I can share exactly what it means. So when I was talking about the visions, I can explain the vision part. When people say, well, he says he went to heaven and he spoke to God and this, that, and the third. If you can believe that from somebody from that time frame, then why can't you believe it from somebody this time frame? There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of UFOs, extraterrestrial stuff going on, and people are very upset and hurt, scared, confused, and all kinds of stuff. Some people are taken advantage of because of their mental states, their beliefs, their narratives, and all this other stuff. So it's very easy to get information mixed up. I want to say this. If you take the time to actually research the information for yourself, you will understand what's going on. And you can't just merely just go here and say, yo, I've read the Book of Enoch and that's it. You know what I'm saying? I know what it says and this, that, and third. But then when I come across you and say, hey, what do you understand about visions? And they're saying, well, Enoch's seen this stuff. Well, he didn't see it with his two eyes. So you can't say that. You have to understand these words. Angels. You got to understand what an angel is. Literally is a messenger, right? Demons. The Septuagint is literally a translation of the Aramaic and Hebrew text Bible into the Septuagint, where we get the Bible of today. And they have what's called the Strong Concordance, right? You go in there and look up in there about the angels, and you'll see how it's named a messenger. So all this stuff plays a major part in understanding. You can't just sit here and say, well, they said angels, and you think that, oh, angels flew from the sky or this, that, and the third. You have to honestly almost break down every single word. I literally have dictionaries right up here. I have an etymology dictionary. This research is not just a mere of I read this and then I go on about my day. That's not how it works, because how can you use words of 2026 and have those words mean the same thing thousands of years ago? It literally says in this book that, the translations were done thousands of years ago, right? So words change over time, right? We use words differently than we use today. And I can go into a whole bunch of words in that right now. But if I was to say those words of what they mean today and what they actually meant in the past, my YouTube would be shut down. And I have at least 5 because I was reading this book from Donald Kehoe. I was rereading his book from Donald Kehoe. And it never dawned on me, but this dude used some words in it that's questionable, not in a sense of today, but it would be today if I was to go over it. So when I do his book, I'm going to have to be careful of certain words because he uses certain words. Words matter. Also, narratives matter, right? And that's one thing I don't want to go into. If there's a question about the Book of Enoch that you want, if there's something that I said that's interesting, let me know. I only go off of what the books say. I only go off of what I've researched, what I've read, what I understand, and that's coming from thousands of books. I've had people tell me so many times, I promote books so much, and I'm an author, that people think some of these books are mine, and it's crazy. And I'm like, yo, I rarely promote my book. Let me go ahead and promote my book now, because I forget about that a lot. Let me also promote my boy, Lil Vibe, great music. He just had a track come out. about a month ago, a couple of months ago. I'm not sure how long ago it was. But Lil Vibe on Spotify, I play his music a lot. His music is actually the finale, the final cut of my lives. Um, Great supporter. I support him. We do our thing. But my book right here, Journey Through the Origins of History, can be bought on Amazon. I'm going to be doing my book soon. Probably, matter of fact, I'll probably start doing my book next year. And the reason why is for two reasons. When GTA 6 comes out, I'm going to be playing that game a lot, for the first 6 months, probably. That's probably going to be my vacation time from all this studying and research and stuff like that. I'm still going to be doing lives. I'm still going to be reading. I'm still going to be doing everything that I'm doing. But I'm going to start implementing playing GTA 6 in my stuff. And the only reason why I say that is because when I played GTA 5, there was some hidden stuff that I found in there that was very interesting historically wise. But it's just I'm a gamer also. I play games. One of my favorite games is Mortal Kombat. I used to play that game a lot. I have to take my time and stop playing that game because of the simple fact that a lot of people they get mad on how I play that game and how I win. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to download it now and play some later on today. Yep, I am. I'm going to do some. I appreciate everybody coming out. Everybody, like I said, go visit Lil Vibe on Spotify. I always say this, always look, don't believe anything I say. Don't go off what I say. All these books that I'm sharing with you is either on my hard copy or Kindle. I have a whole playlist on my website, on my YouTube channel that has that. Those are all the books I have personally. I update my website on books slowly because I have a lot of books everywhere. So it's hard. And because I just started putting this list up together and stuff like that, it's a lot of books. I have thousands of books. I have a lot of books. I have a lot of hard copy books, and then I have a lot of Kindle books. You know what I'm saying? Because I ain't got enough money to be buying all kinds of books. And I sure don't have enough space in this house to put all these books. I mean, I have two libraries right now. I have one in the living room. Then I have one here in the study room. I have books over here. So books everywhere. Kids got books. So like I said, books is knowledge. Until next time, knowledge is power.
Got a little hype now. Can I let it die down? I remember days in the trench. Time to go hard in. Time to go all in. Time to get my all to this shit. Panamera maxed out, first class flights out and landed to Pacific, yeah, it's lit.